With McValue at McDonald's, you don't just get deals on the drinks. You get deals on McDonald's drinks. So when you're breaking a sweat, embrace the chill without breaking the bank. And when your crew is running on empty, keep your wallet full while refreshing the squad.
Ace the vibe check with drinks like lemonade, frozen Fanta Blue Raspberry, or any size drink for just $1.49. Limited time only. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Are you ready for more independence as a financial advisor? Consider the RIA model. Schwab Advisor Services has helped thousands of advisors make the move. To find your path, start with Schwab at advisorservices.schwab.com/paths today.
Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
If it seems like your seasonal allergies are getting worse, you're not wrong. And for a variety of reasons, even if you don't have hay fever right now, you could someday soon, unless something is done. Sneezing, congestion, itchy nose, watery eyes, a Kleenex in the sleeve at all times, you get the picture. And scientists say there is more of this to come based on the evidence today, and possibly worse. I'm Kris McCusker, and in this episode of The Big Story, we look at why this should be a concern to everyone. Amanda Ruggeri is science and features journalist with the BBC, and you wrote a very thorough piece on this, looking at all aspects. So first of all, thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I know this is going to be a bit of a loaded question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What is the headline takeaway from this piece that you wrote in April? I mean, for people who have seasonal allergies, this feels important.
You are absolutely right. This is important. Hay fever is, it can be debilitating for some people. It's experienced by about 400 million people around the world. So this is a pretty common disease, and it's going to get worse unless we drastically tackle climate change and emissions. All of the simulations, all of the experiments that scientists are doing are finding that it's going to get a lot worse for folks.
So my next question is, why? Why is it getting worse?
So there's a couple different parts to this. So one is that, especially if you focus with hay fever on pollen. So pollen is obviously a really common allergen that sparks hay fever in people. And what scientists are finding is that the pollen seasons are getting longer. They're starting earlier. They're ending later. These plants and trees are also putting more pollen into the air as a result of warming temperatures and emissions. And in addition to all of that, there are some species that are, invasive, and they're spreading across bigger areas than they used to. So new populations of people are being exposed to allergens that, previously they would not have been exposed to. So it's this kind of perfect bundle of different consequences that is causing this to become even more of an issue.
Have you done any research on the whole idea of botanical sexism, I think is what it was referred to, that for a long time governments were planting male plants because then they wouldn't reproduce, but it turns out the male plants had more pollens coming from them?
So that came up with a couple of the researchers that I spoke to. It's exactly as you say. So basically there was this idea that, you didn't want to plant trees in cities, in parks that would produce fruit and seeds. You wanted to plant the male versions, which wouldn't do that. But it was later found that the male versions can often produce more pollen. This is actually a little bit controversial because there's some research that's found that the effect of this is actually relatively small in big cities like New York City. But yeah, it does seem to have played some kind of role. And it is one thing that researchers I spoke with said we should take a look at going forward to try to, mitigate having so much pollen in the air.
It feels, when I read about it, it felt like it was that's a simple solution, right? Like you go with the male plant to cut down, but in actual fact, in reality, you might be making things worse at the same time. And it's a bit of a catch-22 because you want the plants and the trees for a whole bunch of reasons to be a part of cities, but you don't want to further exacerbate, make it difficult for people who live in these cities.
For sure. And I don't think anyone is suggesting that you just, cut down all the trees, cut down all the plants, and that's your solution for getting rid of pollen. I think the issue is much more the fact that we're putting all of these emissions into our air, and a lot of the most bothersome plants for hay fever sufferers really thrive on CO2. They really thrive on these higher emissions, and they really thrive in warmer temperatures. So we're just making it very easy for them to grow more than perhaps is optimal.
So, like many other situations, environmental situations, this sounds like a man-made problem. Humans have made this worse.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the consensus. We know that climate change is largely human induced. Obviously, the emissions in our atmosphere come from humans. I don't think there's really much debate about that at this point. And that's what's helping these plants to put so much more pollen into the air and for longer periods. I mean, I don't know if you saw, but in the story that I did, some of the statistics are pretty striking. So there was one study, for example, that looked at 11 different locations, mostly cities, if I remember, across North America from 1995 to 2015. And it found that 10 out of 11 of those locations experienced longer ragweed pollen seasons. Ragweed is a really big problem for a lot of folks in that period. And in that 20-year period, I know you're in Canada, the season for ragweed pollen lengthened by 25 days in Winnipeg, Manitoba. So, that's just in the last 20 years. And again, this is a trend that is going to continue.
Did you speak to doctors or pharma companies? Are there medications that can mitigate this? And I should have said at the outset, full disclosure, I am a seasonal allergy sufferer. So this is all of interest to me.
Totally. You know what? Same. And it's really interesting because I don't remember growing up having any allergies. I don't even remember having allergies really in my 20s. It's only been in the last 5 or 10 years. And so who knows what that is? I'm just one person. I can't say, it's climate change in the past 5 or 10 years. But I am noticing that my allergies did start recently, and they are getting worse every year. If I sneeze on this podcast, that's probably why. We've got a lot of pollen in the air at the moment. My husband suffers from it a lot. So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I just think it's really common. I didn't speak to allergists for this piece, but I did for another piece that I'm working on at the moment, kind of focused on hay fever treatments and what can be done. And it's really interesting because, they say there are actually quite good treatments for hay fever these days. The problem is not a lot of people know about them, including a lot of GPs, and not a lot of people who know about them actually use them properly. So one really good example of that they said that they gave me was nasal sprays. Everybody kind of goes to the pharmacy and get your nasal spray, and you use that days when you're feeling a bit blocked up. You might use the spray, and days you don't, and you like spritz it up your nose and you breathe in. And they were like, that's all wrong. That's all totally wrong. You shouldn't do any of that. So what you should be doing, according to them, this is not medical advice. I'm not a doctor, but this is from the allergist that I spoke to. They said you start, even before the allergy season kicks off, and you use it religiously every day. Even on days when you don't feel symptoms, morning and evening. Ideally, they said it should be a spray that is an antihistamine and a corticosteroid if you want the strongest, so it's a combination. But then the interesting thing to me was they said, stop sniffing. Stop spraying it up your nose and sniffing. You actually want to be spraying it towards your nostril and just letting it stay there and letting it drip out, because if you sniff, then it's going to the back of your throat and it's not doing any good. It has to be in the nasal passages to do any good. So I think there are some things that probably just folks could be doing with the everyday medications they're already using to make it more effective. But they were also talking about how for people who are really suffering or really want a long-term solution, there are pretty good immunological treatments now as well. So, you might know them as allergy shots. It's these shots you can, so you can do the shots, but there's also treatments now that you can put under the tongue. So you don't have to do the shots. You just have a tablet under the tongue that's for your specific allergy, and it's every day. And again, you have to do it for like months. So you have to commit to it. But for a lot of people, that's a lot easier than going to a doctor's office and getting a shot. So there's fairly good treatments. So their big takeaway to me was, please talk to your GP, press for a specialist referral if you need one. Don't just put up with it, because Hay fever, as you might know, as a sufferer yourself, it can really affect what you do every day and affect quality of life. It can affect how you sleep. But also for not a small number of people, it can lead to more respiratory infections, more colds, ear infection, even to developing asthma, which, as we know, can be quite risky. So don't suffer was what they were saying to me.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, education is key here.
With McValue at McDonald's, you don't just get deals on the drinks. You get deals on McDonald's drinks. So when you're breaking a sweat, embrace the chill without breaking the bank. And when your crew is running on empty, keep your wallet full while refreshing the squad.
Ace the vibe check with drinks like lemonade, frozen Fanta Blue Raspberry, or any size drink for just $1.49. Limited time only. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Are you a financial advisor considering the Independent Registered Investment Advisor, or RIA model, and wondering where to start? Start with Schwab Advisor Services. Schwab has helped thousands evaluate the full range of options and can help you determine your best path forward. Navigate the big and small decisions by tapping into Schwab's decades worth of insights on what fuels RIA success. With Schwab Advisor Services, you have a custodian that will support you every step of the way. Start your journey today at advisorservices.schwab.com/paths.
In state and local government, tech upgrades aren't optional, they're essential. Whether it's improving digital services, protecting public data, or modernizing outdated systems, the demand for skilled IT professionals has never been higher. CBT Nuggets helps you stay ahead with affordable, on-demand IT training that's built for your schedule. Our short, practical videos and hands-on virtual labs make it easy to build real-world skills in networking, cybersecurity, cloud technologies, and more. You don't need expensive hardware or complicated setups, just a browser and the motivation to grow. Whether you're an IT admin, public service tech, or new to the field, CBT Nuggets gives you the tools to better support your team and your community. And with new content added regularly, there's always something relevant to learn. Join thousands of learners who are upgrading their skills and advancing their careers. Start your 7-day free trial today at cbtnuggets.com. Because smarter tech skills don't just help you, they help your whole community succeed.
For some people who have asthma, this is potentially life and death. It's beyond the allergies are annoying. This is potentially life-threatening. So I guess I wonder if how much of that plays a role in sort of the response to all of this going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that it plays more of a role, because one of the things that came across when I was doing interviews for that piece as well was allergists saying, again, even a lot of folks in the health profession don't take hay fever seriously. So they are really trying to get out the word that it can lead to all of these other things. I don't know if in my piece that you originally contacted me about, if you remember the bit about thunderstorm asthma. That was quite interesting as well, because that's basically a phenomenon where because of a storm, the wind whips pollen up into the air. Scientists aren't sure exactly what happens up there, but it seems like the moisture of the storm and the wind and possibly the lightning breaks the pollen particles up into thousands of even smaller, tiny, tiny fragments, pushes all of that pollen back down to the ground. People breathe it in. And what is so terrifying about it, even though it should be mentioned that it's a relatively rare occurrence, but when it does happen, what's been so terrifying is that people who didn't previously have any history of asthma wind up having asthma attacks. So again, that's kind of speaking to this scary relationship, really, between hay fever and asthma that can happen even kind of instantaneously.
That's worrisome for people who may not even know it should be a worry to them at this point. The other thing I wonder about is, was there anything COVID interconnected? Because I know initially in 2020, when flights were canceled and people weren't driving, there was talk that was sort of calming things down, maybe temporarily. But I guess I wonder if COVID added to this, made it better.
I didn't look at that specifically, but I can say that, emissions obviously bounced back and then some after the pandemic. So it really didn't make any long-term difference to emissions. We're right back on track for more and more in the atmosphere. But in terms of, that few months where people weren't driving, I lived in London and you could tell, the air was cleaner. There was just less pollution. And there's also an interesting interconnection between pollution and hay fever. So it seems that air pollution also makes people's allergic reactions worse. There's something about the particles, the emissions. It seems like they kind of combine with the pollen and make the pollen more airborne than perhaps it would be. So I would imagine, it seems theoretically like it would make sense, like in those months if you lived in a city.
But a non-issue just because we've all gone back to our usual behaviors. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I remember those days, and it was like, I think I was even interviewed on a radio program about, is this a reset that's really going to change the arc of humanity? And no,
not so much.
Not in that sense.
What do we do? This is yet another thing that we need to watch with climate change and our environmental footprint. Is that the only way to sort of make this better at this point is to deal with pollution and CO2 emissions?
So I think the more we allow pollution and CO2 emissions to run away, the worse this is going to be, right? So the more we can do to cut down on all of that, the fewer people are going to develop hay fever and develop especially debilitating symptoms from hay fever over the next decades. So anything we can do is going to be a help compared to the worst case scenario. So I think that's one way to think about it. That being said, obviously, unless a lot of things change very drastically, very quickly, emissions are going to continue to go up. The temperature is going to continue to go up. Yes, I think one thing, and this came out of conversations I had with scientists, one thing we need to do, it sounds quite boring, but it's very important and often gets overlooked, is to learn more about this, figure out where is this going to happen, what allergens are involved, who's going to be the most affected. Obviously they have some idea, but there's a lot more research and work that needs to be done around all of this, and also monitoring. So there's actually only a few countries that even have fairly good pollen forecasting and pollen monitoring for folks who might suffer from allergies. And I also spoke to a scientist who said, yeah, and even that's not enough, because the amount of pollen in the air isn't the same as how many allergens are in the air and in what quantity. It's a little bit of a different metric, and it's sort of confusing to explain. But she's saying what you're most concerned about is really the allergen. So, and we don't even have, there's not any network I'm aware of that really monitors and forecasts for that. So that's, better research, better monitoring, not probably the time to be cutting funding to all of that stuff. And then in terms of, what else can be done, there are some interesting environmental initiatives. So I live in Switzerland, and here in Switzerland, they have taken the threat of ragweed quite seriously. So ragweed is that invasive plant that I mentioned. It's originally from North America, but it's been spreading across Europe quite rapidly, and a lot of people are very allergic to it. Switzerland recently banned the importation or sale of ragweed in the country. And they also, in at least Bern, and I'm not sure about other cities, have kind of groups that will go around and pull out any ragweed that they find. So really old school methods. For what it's worth, interestingly, some US cities were doing stuff like this 100 years ago with ragweed. And it did seem to have an effect. There was one study that found that it reduced the amount of ragweed pollen by 50%. So, kind of these very old school, putting a bit of elbow grease in approaches could make a difference for people. But yeah, the big takeaway is that we also need to deal with emissions.
Okay, well, more to come on this. I feel like this is one of those stories that will continue to develop, and thank you for the work that you do on this, and thank you for taking some time to talk about it.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's Amanda Ruggeri, science and features journalist at the BBC. Her follow-up piece can be found soon at bbc.com under the Earth tab. And that wraps up another episode of The Big Story. You can find us on the Seeker app, SEEKR. Please rate, review, follow, and share. I'm Kris McCusker. Thanks for listening.
With McValue at McDonald's, you don't just get deals on the drinks. You get deals on McDonald's drinks. So when you're breaking a sweat, embrace the chill without breaking the bank. And when your crew is running on empty, keep your wallet full while refreshing the squad.
Ace the vibe check with drinks like lemonade, frozen Fanta Blue Raspberry, or any size drink for just $1.49. Limited time only. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Are you a financial advisor considering the independent RIA model and wondering where to start? Start with Schwab Advisor Services. They've helped thousands evaluate the full range of options and can help you determine your best path forward. Start your journey today at advisorservices.schwab.com/paths.
Feel like you're stuck in career limbo? Clock in, clock out, repeat. No growth, no new opportunities. It's time to break out and break into tech. With CBT Nuggets, you can start building the IT skills that companies are hiring for right now. We make training fast, simple, and practical. From networking to cybersecurity, you'll get short, easy-to-watch videos and hands-on virtual labs so you can build real-world skills without expensive gear or complicated setups. For just $59 a month, you get unlimited access to our full training library. That includes certifications, skill-based learning, and practice exams, a $100 value included free. Learn anytime, anywhere, and get job ready on your terms. Thousands have used CBT Nuggets to launch new careers, and you can too. Right now, CBT Nuggets is offering a free trial. Easily find the training you need and test it out with no commitment. Start your 7-day free trial now at cbtnuggets.com. Don't wait. A better job is just a few clicks away.